All right, we get enough to eat? We'll try to get started. Maybe I'll get you out of here before way too late tonight. But if we're going to talk good about the men, I'll have a lot to say maybe. I got one quick story that I'll tell you about. You might have heard it before because I've told it before, but when you get my age, you don't remember very well. There was a young man that was struggling to find a serious girlfriend to marry. Seemed like he just couldn't find the right girl, and all of his friends was married, and he was getting up there, maybe close to 30 years old and turning into what he considered to be an old maid. So he just didn't know what to do. He just couldn't seem to settle down with a girl. So he did what we all ought to do. He went and talked to his pastor and was explaining the situation to the pastor. He said, I just can't seem to find a girl. He said, well, what seems to be the problem? He said, well, my mama always runs them off. She don't like them. She don't think they're good enough, and she runs them off. He said, well, why don't you find a girl like your mama that she would like? He said, well, preacher, I did that. He said, this last girl I dated her about 2 months. And she was just like my mama. She walked like my mama. She talked like my mama. She favored my mama a little bit. And she could even cook like my mama. He said, well, what happened to her? He said, my dad didn't like her. So tonight I want to talk about fathers, dads, men. And I guess the theme for it is, it ain't easy. I tell people quite often, it ain't easy being me. And that's not bragging, that's just about a fact sometimes. But I listen to a lot of other pastors, preachers, evangelists talk in my travels, and Max Lucado says it's hard to be a man, it's harder to be a husband, but it's the very hardest to be a father. If you think about that and you put yourself in that situation, it is tough. We got a lot against us. The TV shows, if you watch any television, which I watch very little, but I think back at the times that I watched TV, dads are portrayed as being slow or dumb or not very sharp. You got the sitcoms like, I don't even know the name of it, but the guy was Al Bundy. He was looked down on. Tim Toolman Taylor, he never could get anything right. And of course, if you like the cartoons, Homer Simpson was kind of a joke too. But the dads have a raw deal. I think it's just tough sometimes. I think it's important to know that there's a difference between a father and a daddy. I think most any man walking can father a child. It takes a special man to be a daddy. It's tough. It's tough. It takes a lot of responsibility. It takes a lot of personal time that you could do other things. But if you're going to be a real daddy, you're going to give up a lot of yourself. I found a verse in Corinthians that Paul wrote to the church of Corinth. It's Corinthians 4:14-15. And if I could read this as good as Paul wrote it, we could just go home after I get through reading it, because this says a whole lot, but I'll try to expand on it a little bit. Verse 14 says, I do not write these things to shame you, but as my beloved children, I warn you. And verse 15 says, for though you might have 10,000 instructors in Christ, yet you do not have many fathers. For in Christ Jesus I have begotten you through the gospel. First thing I want to point out there is I don't want to shame you. I don't want to shame me. When I talk about you, when I talk about dads, I'm talking about me, and it's not a shameful discussion. But it's an awareness that I want to warn you. It's not a perilous warning. It is a warning of just make it known, make you aware of what's going on. The part about the 10,000 instructors, yeah, I mean, how many of us here daily, I can tell you what I'd do if I was you. Yeah. Oh, that I'd take care of that. What, it's always easy when you're not in the hot seat. We have sometimes just seconds to make a decision, and when it's a wrong decision, we get all those people that can tell us, those instructors say, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. I tell you what you should have done. There's an old story about two old rednecks driving a car late at night. They were speeding, and the police stopped them, walked up to the driver's door and tapped on the glass with his flashlight. The guy rolled the glass down. He hit him right across the nose with the flashlight. He said, when the highway patrol stops you, boy, you have that window down when I get up here. I said, yes, sir. He got his license, registration. Went back to the car, wrote the ticket, come back. He said, just wait right just a minute. Walked around to the other side of the car, tapped on the glass, and the passenger rolled the window down. He slapped him with that flashlight right across the nose. He said, hey, man, what'd you hit me for? He said, I'm just granting your wish, sir. I said, what kind of wish? He said, because you wouldn't get a mile up the road before you said, I wish that joker to hit me with that flashlight. There's our instructors, guys. That's 10,000 instructors. But yet there are not many fathers. Oh, it takes a lot of love and effort to be a daddy. That's what we were just talking about. There's a few stats. I read where there's 19.5 million kids born annually in the United States. Here's where it gets your attention. Fatherless children, 35% of all kids in America are born to a single mother, no father in the household. 1 out of 3. Not being racist, but if you go to the Hispanic families, it's nearly 60%. And if you go to the black families, it's 72%. Almost 3 out of 4 have no father in the household. That's tough, because in my study, and I read here where paternal, we are the paternal figure in the household. The same root word for paternal is the same root word for pattern. I don't know how this stuff happens biblically or through the language, but that's pretty amazing that paternal comes from pattern, or pattern comes from paternal. We are to be a pattern for our kids. You may not know they're watching, you may not know they're listening, but they are. And we've got to be a pattern for the kids to grow up by. If kids are going to be successful, I said it's easy to father a child without being overly graphic. Child starts when a man makes a deposit. Most any man can make a deposit and start a family. If you don't continue those deposits, that's where things go wrong. We have to deposit time in the kids. We have to deposit love in the kids. We have to deposit responsibility in the kids. And don't forget, we got to deposit discipline. That is a fact. My son down in Georgia's got 4 kids, and 2 of them, the last 2 they're a handful. And he's busy working, and he leaves them with his wife quite often. And we were there visiting, and they were being kids, and she was saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, well, look, kids born, they know how to sin. They know how, they're born in sin. You got to teach them to behave. And that's what we do. We have to teach them. They know how to be ugly. That's born in them. That's just fact. They have to be taught. They have to have a pattern in front of them. Anywhere along the line, if those deposits stop, the kids don't develop like they should. And that's what we're looking at around today, is a lot of underdeveloped kids that are now almost adults that we're dealing with, that don't have responsibility. They didn't see that they needed responsibility. And going into this thing, I thought it was basically, the young men suffered the worst. But from reading and studying and listening to a lot of guys speak, I think the daughters are affected greater than the sons. I think, according to some of these guys speaking, ladies, girls, daughters are born with a desire of a man, a father figure in their life. And if there's no father figure in their life, they're going to find that male figure somewhere. First boy comes along, first guy that comes along, you don't know who that guy will be, what he'll be, probably not good. So that father figure in the house may be more important for the girls than the guys. I listen, as I said, to a lot of people speak. I listen to a lot of T.D. Jakes stuff. I know T.D.'s been through a little bit of a bad publicity, don't know anything about it, good, bad, truth, untrue. But he had a sermon in 2015 that said, when men fall short. It was a Father's Day sermon. It's an hour and 40 minutes, guys. If you've got time, take your family, sit down, Google it up, and listen to it. It would save a lot of marriages. It's T.D. Jakes. He's pretty graphic in his talks, but he can communicate. He is a great communicator. But he talked about the story of Jacob. You know, Jacob was the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Had 10 kids with the first wife, Leah, who he worked 7 years, got tricked into marrying Leah, ended up working 7 more years for the love of his life, which was Rachel. Rachel was barren, couldn't have kids. Leah had the first 10, and then Rachel finally got pregnant and had Joseph, who was his favorite, coat of many colors, and you know the story. Well, the last one would be Benjamin, and she was having trouble with the pregnancy. It was not good. He was going to lose her if he didn't get her to a town called Ephratah, which would later be named Bethlehem. The Bible says he was trying to get her to Ephratah, and it was just a short distance away, but T.D. Jakes can expand on it and just about draw you a picture in your mind. But he's driving the horses to try to get her there, but every time he would start the horses, she would cry out that I need you to stop the horses, go back and be in the wagon with her, making no progress. Got to drive the horses to get there, but he can't be with her and make progress. And he ended up losing her, saved the baby, but he lost his wife. Trying to be in one place, trying to be with her, trying to work, trying to be with the family, trying to work. You see where I'm going. And just an example, I told Seth I was going to embarrass him, but I don't think you can embarrass him because Seth's never going to be very far from doing the right thing. 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had an altar call, and the whole church came down to altar. Everybody's praying. Just before we started praying, out of the corner of my eye, I see something moving. I look back, and Seth's our sound man. Good sound man. They're hard to find. He keeps us straight back here, and our sound's got some bugs in it. If you leave it, it might squeal, it might pop, it might do whatever, it might not work. So it's important that Seth man his position, but he left his position to come to the altar with his wife. I'm probably the only one noticed it, but I noticed it. I think that's commendable. Randy plays the keyboard. He knows better than to get too loud, and it all went smooth. Nothing happened. No mic squealed. Nothing popped or cracked, and it all worked out. And he made the right decision. But I don't know in my life if I'd have made that decision. I am tied to work, tied to responsibility, and that's the pattern that my daddy put in me. He worked all the time. If you know, the kids today say, well, my dad didn't go to my school program. My dad didn't go to the games. My dad didn't go to the piano recitals. Well, my dad didn't. But he was working so we could have a game, and working so there was a piano for a piano recital. And somewhere in there, we've got to weigh that thing out. And I don't know if I said this earlier, but it ain't easy being a dad. But there's a decision to make, and it's probably going to be the wrong one, but you've got, and I've got to make that decision. It's tough. It is really tough being a good daddy. But we typically follow the pattern that we grew up with. It's not locked in us. It's not etched in stone. I've used this as an example, you know, the fatherless kids that we just talked about. Well, we all know we got a vice president in the White House now that grew up in a house without a father. He defeated a lady that ran for president who was the vice president that grew up in a house without a father. And they came after a president 8 years that grew up in a household without a father. You can make it without a father. It might be hard, but you got to break a pattern somewhere. You can't follow just because my daddy won't there, I'm not going to be there. That won't work. We have to change that pattern. If you look all the way back to Genesis, this is kind of something that caught my attention one time a while back. Adam came from the dirt. He was developed from the dust. He's fed and nourished by the dirt. You say, well, he eats beef. Well, the beef eats grass. Adam's encouragement, his nourishment comes from the dirt. He came from the dirt. He's encouraged and fed by the dirt. Eve came from Adam. Eve is to be encouraged and nourished by Adam. Cain and Abel came from Eve. They are to be fed and nourished and encouraged by Eve. All of them indirectly came from Adam. He's in charge of the whole shebang. That was God's plan, but man, we twisted it a little bit. We just couldn't wait, to get there. We overspend our means. The wives had to go to work so we could pay the bills, so we could keep up with the Joneses, and the kids are lacking. When mama's not home, the kids started lacking. I think I'd probably get locked up by the ladies, but that was the start of the downfall of the kids, I think. But there's an old line that said we spend money we don't have to buy things we don't need to impress people we didn't even like to start with. There's a whole lot of truth to that line. As far as fixing things, verse 15 in Paul's writing there said that he had begotten you, or I have begotten you. Begotten means a new beginning, a new birth, a change, a start over. When you're saved, you're born again, you start over. There's nothing saying if you've got an issue at home with kids, with marriage, that you can't start over. A new beginning, a new begotten. And I could go into some ugly things about divorce and how families take the kids and use them as a punishment to the spouse. And guys, we didn't leave the kids. I've been through a divorce myself. I didn't divorce my kids, I divorced my wife. And it's important for you to understand, if you're in that situation, to make sure the kids know we didn't divorce the kids, but they will use the kids for a switch to whip you with. And it happens way, way too many times. I'm going to wind down with one more quick story, if I can tell it and get through it. There was a third grade teacher, gave her class one final assignment on the last day of school. Before you go home, take out a pen, piece of paper, and write down something that you would like to be. If you could be anything in the world, what would you like to be? She was going through these things as they were going out the door. And I reckon little Johnny gets all the attention, but little Johnny's letter she come to. Little Johnny's letter said, if I could be anything in the world, I would like to be my daddy's self. Cell phone. That's tough. He said, then he would pick me up. He would talk to me. He would listen to me. Keep me charged all the time. And never, ever leave home without me. Don't know who that young man was, but he said a mouthful, because I'm afraid our cell phones have taken the place of a lot of time that we need to spend being that pattern that I've talked about. And just to close, so maybe on a high note, Paul said, I don't say these things to shame you or me, because I have certainly been all through this myself. But I say these things to warn you, not as a perilous warning to be afraid of, but to be aware of that these things are going on around us. It may be us, it may be a friend, it may be our son or granddaughter or grandson. Just open our eyes and be aware, and be assured of how important it is for us men to be men, be real men, and stand up for what's right. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming. I know it's July 4th week, but it's good to see all of us. Ain't got a place at the lake and the beach to stay all week. Anybody got anything they'd like to add, say, or prayer request?